Welcome to English 4E. This is Term 1B, and we are on Class 11. Today we are going to be looking at assignment K17, which is all about using a dictionary and thesaurus and learning about synonyms, antonyms, multiple meanings, shades of meaning, all that wonderful stuff. This is Jillian Brucey, and here are the ways to contact me. If you want to talk to me while I'm in the studio, 1-800-465-7144. If you want to speak to me afterwards, I am in the office, 1-800-667-3703. My extension is 2211. Email is jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca or jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. My Facebook is capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA, so G Percy Wassa. And if you're looking for what it looks like, you can see there's a little avatar down there that sort of vaguely looks like me in a lovely little fall scene. Probably should change it to some sort of winter scene for these days, but anyways. And then there are two different YouTube channels you can take a look at. There is the teacher one I have that is the same address of G Percy Wassa, and that has all the courses I've taught this year and last year. And the reason that's important is I'm only at class 11 for English 4E, but if you go to last year's playlist for English 4E, you can see all the assignments. Now, some of them are changing a little bit, but it is a great way to get into some information if you are ahead of where we are now. The other YouTube channel that we have is basically a Wassa distance education YouTube channel. It has all the courses from all the teachers, but only for this year. So only what we've taught so far this year. But if you're taking courses from us this year, that can be very helpful as well. All right, how to hand in work. So whenever you hand in work, please send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. If you're worried about me seeing it, you can always CC me in the email if you want to be doubly safe, jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca. When you do this, the secretary is able to log that you've submitted the work, and it stays there in that email for us to retrieve it later on, which is really, really helpful sometimes. Always make sure that your assignments have your full name, the course name, the assignment number, and name if there's a name. And if the assignment asks for both a rough and a good draft, please label which one is which and include them both in the same email. And as well, if the assignment does not ask you for a rough draft, I'm requesting that you please do not send it in. It can be confusing, and sometimes I can spend 20 to 30 minutes marking someone's rough draft and not realize that it was the rough draft because they didn't label it, and the assignment doesn't normally call for it, and that can be kind of confusing. So try to avoid that if you can. If you need to make a photograph of your assignment, because some people I know are handing it in through Facebook, that's fine. Just make sure the photograph is nice and crisp and clear so that your writing can be read. Then once you've taken the picture, if you're going to email it, download it to your phone or computer, save it, and then send it as an attachment. If you just share it with me, like there's kind of a share button, it doesn't show up quite properly. It's usually huge, and it takes a little while for us to shrink it all down and get it to look proper. So if you can do that for us, that'd be really, really helpful. Okay, we are at the end of our week. I thought I was going to be getting to K17 and K18 today, but there's no way. There's just a lot to K17, so that's all we're going to get to. 18 and 19 will have to happen next week. All right, so all sorts of things to look at today. Understand what kind of information print dictionaries give you, understand how to look up information in a print dictionary, understand how to look up information in an online dictionary, which is a little bit different, understand the difference between homophones and homographs, understand how to use a thesaurus, understand what the synonyms and antonyms are, understand how to use a thesaurus to find appropriate synonyms and antonyms for your writing, understand shades of meaning or different meanings and how it can affect your synonym choice, generate synonyms and antonyms for given words, and generate sentences that use synonyms or antonyms to replace a given word. All right, and this is under activity number 6. So in your unit, this is what you should see. It should say using a dictionary and a thesaurus. Access to a good dictionary and thesaurus during this course will definitely improve the quality of your writing. A dictionary will give you the meanings of words you are not familiar with, whether they be nouns, verb, adjectives, etc. A dictionary can also help you find the correct spelling or give you examples of the word in a sentence. So if you don't have a dictionary of your own at your house and you would like one, normally the Learning Center in your community should have one. But if you want to, we also keep dictionaries here. We can send you one. I would have to check and see if we have thesauruses or not. I feel like we should, but I can't guarantee it. But let me know, because I can always try and get some for us. A thesaurus is a little bit like a dictionary. It will give you a list of words with similar meanings to any words that you're interested in. Those words are usually known as synonyms. So if I say hot, another synonym might be warm. The one they use is collect or assemble. On the other hand, antonyms are words that have opposite meanings. In other words, hot versus cold. In a variety of workplace, understanding synonyms and antonyms and being able to use them on occasion is important. Incidentally, homonyms. Now, I don't like the definition of homonyms. Homonyms could be either homographs or homophones. So in general, we're going to talk about those later. Both the dictionary and the thesaurus are useful resources when applied to reading and writing. I'm going to just kind of cross this off because there's actually, I don't care for that. Let me see if I can make that happen here. Hang on a sec. Okay. Yeah, I think I thought I had changed that, but maybe that's still what it says. Okay, so here's the actual assignment. This assignment is quite a long one. It runs from page 20 to page 22. It covers a really broad range of subjects that a dictionary and a thesaurus can help you with. So I'm going to break this assignment down into smaller chunks. So questions 1 and 2 really focus on synonyms. Questions 3, 4, and 5 focus on antonyms. And then questions 6 and 7 focus on homonyms. And for all these questions, understanding how to look up words and how to use a dictionary and a thesaurus is very useful. As far as marks go, for this assignment, the amount of marks each question is worth is written right next to the question. Overall, the entire assignment is worth 18 marks. It's important when you're doing this assignment that the word you're using is being used correctly in both the meaning and the part of speech, which we'll kind of get to later. But I just want to point out, sometimes people will put any word in there and it's close, but it really isn't quite the same thing. And I won't be able to accept that. So here is an example. Let's say a question asked you to provide a synonym for sadness. Now, if you answered cry, it would be wrong. Why? Well, cry is related to sadness, but it's not a synonym because sadness is a noun and cry is a verb. So sadness is the name of a feeling. Cry is an action that you're doing. So they aren't considered synonyms because they're different parts of speech. A good answer could instead be sorrow because it is also a noun describing a feeling. And it could replace the word sadness in a sentence. Like if I said, his sadness over his child's death was overwhelming, and I took that out and put his sorrow over his child's death was overwhelming, that still makes sense. But if I said his cry over his child's death was overwhelming, that doesn't give you the same picture, right? Now I'm picturing somebody like shouting really loudly or something. So be cautious about that part of it. All right, so talking about print dictionaries, I think everybody knows dictionaries have alphabet. It's organized by the alphabet, A, B, C, D. Usually you might see a tab or it might be color coded on the side. And so first of all, you'd find the right letter for the first letter. But then once you're in there, let's say you're looking at A, there is, oh my gosh, so many A words. You don't want to have to like try and read every single word in the dictionary. So what we do is, if you look at the top of a dictionary page, I've got one there, they have what are called guide words. And I'm going to just kind of like draw your attention to them really quick here. So, oh, go back up there. Doesn't want to let me see what I want to see now. Hang on a second. There we go. Okay, so try this again. Yes. Okay, so it has declension on the far left and deficient on the far right. So any words in the alpha and any words in the language would have to be between declension and deficient. Deficient will be the last word on the page. So generally you look, first of all, at the first two letters. So DE words are here. Then I would say DEC words. DE, the two E's would work too, yeah, and then DEF. Now, not every DEC, you can see DECL is where it starts. So you have to kind of look. And every dictionary is going to be a little bit different because they may be different sizes. Some dictionaries are trying to be like really thorough and use every word, like the Oxford English Dictionary. And some are what they call like a pocket dictionary or a compact. And they're definitely like getting rid of some words that are not used as often. So you have to be mindful of that too. So if I was looking for the word decorum, DECO, yes, it might be on this page. Let me see here. Decorum, I found it. But if I was looking for a page like defund, I wouldn't find it because here we have DEFI and defund is DEFU. So I might have to flip another page or two to find that word. So that is the first thing about just kind of finding words. And then once you've found the words, you're going to have what's called an entry. Okay, and this is a typical dictionary entry. Every dictionary does do it a little tiny bit different, but I think it's close enough that this should be helpful. So first, you'll see the word that you're looking at, usually in dark letters, but bold print. So here the word is soldier. And they've put a dot between sol and jur because they're trying to show you that's where the syllable division is, okay? Then in brackets or parentheses, technically, they will have how to pronounce it, sol, jur. Now, they leave a space to show where the syllable division is. And see that little, almost looks like an exclamation point? That's telling you which syllable to stress. We haven't really talked about that. It's a bit of a minute kind of detail, but in English, if a word has more than one syllable, one syllable will get the most of the stress or the most of the emphasis. And it can really change how you say the word if you stress the wrong syllable. So they're showing you which one to stress. And then 3 is the part of speech labels. It tells you what different types of parts of speech it has. So here they're telling you N for a noun, V for a verb. And again, usually at the beginning of the dictionary, there'd be a whole little list of these so that you were aware of what they are, but they're generally pretty obvious, right? N for noun, V for verb, ADJ for adjective, ADV for adverb. Anyways, now, a lot of words have more than one meaning. So here, soldier has like 5 different meanings just as a noun, okay? So we've got number 1, a person who serves in an army. Number 2, a private or a non-commissioned officer. Number 3, a person who loyally serves in any cause. And then see how it's got a little colon, it's giving you an example. For example, soldiers of Christ. Number 4, a trusted follower of an organized crime leader, right? So you might have somebody in the mafia say, oh, he's a good soldier. They don't mean he's in the army. They mean he acts like a soldier by doing what he's told to by the crime boss. Number 5, in colonies of certain ants or termites, it's a special type of ant, or what they call an individual, that has a large head, powerful jaws, and is adapted for defending the colony. Okay, now it goes down here and you see V. V means now it's talking about the verb. If you said soldier, like soldier on, you're saying that you should be acting or serving as a soldier. Now here, informal means it's kind of a slang. It's not the proper definition, but a lot of people are using it this way. So they calling it a special meaning. To make a show of working or to shirk work. So here they're saying there's kind of a slang form where you might be using soldier to make it sound like you are acting like you're working, but you're not really working. I haven't heard that particular usage myself, but sometimes there's slang that exists in some parts of the country and not in other parts. And then we have idiom. Idiom, I don't know if we've talked about that yet. I don't think we have. Idiom is where you have a phrase where if you look at each word individually, at the literal meaning of it, it doesn't really make sense. But what's happened is a phrase has developed that has kind of developed sort of a slang or a special meaning that people use to kind of create a metaphor, an analogy, or a picture. So here the idiom is soldier on. So if you said, oh, he's been through some tough times, but he's determined to soldier on, I'd be saying, well, he's carrying on in spite of great difficulty. And now they're giving you an example, right? Remember they did that before. They've got a little colon and then they're giving you a sentence. Sometimes that sentence might be underlined or it could be in italicized, just to kind of make it more obvious that it's a sentence. This is important to know because sometimes people, if you get asked them for a definition, they would read this whole thing and they wouldn't quite notice that part of this isn't a definition, it's just a sentence. So their example sentence is, her debilitating illness made her job more and more difficult, but she soldiered on. And then number 7 is etymology. Not every dictionary will have this. Etymology kind of means, where did it come from? What language or what words is it related to? This isn't always helpful just when you're kind of looking things up to read, but it can be helpful if you're doing special kinds of studies. So here they're talking about soudière, mercenary. They've got ME. I'm not sure the ME maths there. Sounds for all the world like French to me, but anyways. So for certain people, this would be very helpful. Occasionally, a dictionary might also have a little picture if they thought it was something really obscure that you might not be expected to know offhand. Now, an online dictionary is a little bit different, and it's fine to use online dictionaries. They don't always give you exactly the same information. That's something to be aware of. If you enter the phrase online dictionary into whatever search engine you use, Google, Bing, whatever, this is what comes up on my screen. And so the very first thing I see is dictionary.com. And I got to be honest, I don't use that. It's basically a generic one. There's 2 things I would do. Either underneath, they might list some very specific ones, Webster, Cambridge, Scrabble. You probably don't want the Scrabble one unless you're playing Scrabble. But then if you scroll down, there's going to be ones that are more reliable than this kind of generic one here. Webster, Oxford, Cambridge, Collins, those are all very reliable. They've been in business for literally hundreds of years, most of them. So I would trust them over this generic one that I literally have no idea who made it. These people are responsible for what they're doing. This person, maybe not so much. My little soapbox of the day here. Anyways, here's an example. If I was on the Merriam-Webster site and I looked up the word commodious. So along the side, it gives me different things I could look at. It tells me that it's an adjective. It shows me the different syllable breaking up, commodious. Now here, there's usually a little button and I could press it and it would say the word for me. If you're learning this as a second language learner, that can be really helpful to hear how it sounds. Then it might tell you synonyms of commodious. Then it gives you definitions, comfortably or conveniently spacious. Now, again, they've got the colon here and they're giving you a synonym. They say roomy. Then they're giving you an example, a commodious closet. Number 2, they've got the little phrase archaic. Archaic means It used to mean this a long time ago, and you might want to know that in case you're reading literature for a course that's really old, but it isn't how we use the word currently. So in olden day times, it might also mean handy or serviceable. And then it's showing you some other forms of the word that are slightly different. So commodious is an adjective. If I add ly, it becomes commodiously. If I add ness, it becomes commodiousness, which is the noun. And then there's other things I can grab. Obviously, the online dictionaries can be very convenient if you are working at your computer. However, they don't all say the same thing. So Collins Dictionary, when I looked at it, I was initially a little bit confused because they didn't seem to have a definition initially. So here they've got, here's the thing you press to get the pronunciation. They tell you it's an adjective, and then they immediately give you an example. A commodious room or house is large and has a lot of space. And they give you another example. Then they give you some synonyms, which is kind of weird because they still haven't given you a definition. And then on the computer screen, I actually kind of saved these because there was a gigantic ad. And I remember initially I was sort of baffled, like, is that all there is? Now, here they're telling you in British English, here is how it might sound, because they say things a little bit differently sometimes. And then finally, they tell you the definitions of buildings and rooms, large and roomy, spacious. Number 2, archaic, suitable or convenient. And then other forms add commodiously and commodiousness. So you may find that I prefer the Merriam-Webster than this. I find this a little bit confusing. I didn't check out every single dictionary. You may find one that's kind of your favorite. All right. So dictionaries are super useful in a variety of ways. They can check pronunciation. You can check on the spelling of words, including how it might change if you add a suffix or a prefix to it. It can tell you what part of speech it is, including if it can have more than one part of speech. It can also explain the different possible meanings of the word. It will usually give you an example of the word in a sentence to help you understand it in context. And it will help you understand the difference between homophones and between homographs. Okay, so I'm going to kind of quickly talk about that too. A homonym can be 2 different types of words. It could be a homophone or it could be a homograph. This is one of those words that we're borrowing parts of speech from other languages. Greek for this one. So homo, the O sounds ah, and the second O sounds O. And that is the Greek word for same or identical. So up here, homophone basically means same sound, right? You know, the phone. Let me see if I can make this sit where I want to sit. And then a homograph would basically mean same writing, essentially, right? A graph is a type of the concept of writing, basically. Okay, so a homograph is going to be spelled exactly the same way, but it will have a different meaning. Sometimes homographs will sound the same, so you'll have to pay attention to how it's used in the sentence to understand which meaning is being used. So here are some examples. If I said the little brown bat flew into the cave, I mean something very different than if I said the baseball player threw the bat down, right? The first bat is that flying little black furry thing. And the second one is a piece of sports equipment. I saw you at the store yesterday. My dad is using his new saw to build a shed. So the first saw is I'm looking with my eyes and it happened in the past. The second saw is a tool. I am trying to train my dog to do tricks. My auntie left on a train to Winnipeg. So the first train means I'm trying to teach my dog something. The second one, train, means a type of transportation. We saw a beautiful white crane by the lake. This crane would be a long white bird, or the crane was lifting the windows up high. And that crane would be a type of machinery. You guys have seen it, right? It lifts things. So when you're doing homographs, you do need to be careful. In these sentences, I deliberately made sure to make it obvious which way I meant it. But when you're just kind of reading along, the author may not always notice, oh, wait, this could be confused. And if you're, say, used to only thinking about the one type, you might not be aware of the other meaning as much, or might not be thinking of it. It can be confusing. Now, homographs are not always said exactly the same way, okay? And this is even more confusing because sometimes what happens is if you say it the one way, it has the same one meaning. And if you say it the other way, it has a different meaning. So here I've put both types in one sentence so you can kind of hear the difference. And remember how we talked about stress? Usually for these ones, the difference is they have changed which part of the word that they have stressed. So I'm going to give you an example. Okay, so I could say produce, P-R-O. I don't have the thing. I'm going to put an exclamation point. It's not really quite right, but I don't know where to find the thing is. Produce. And that's telling me, say the pro, put the stress on the pro. Produce. Or I could say produce. And I'm putting the stress on the deuce part. And that means something different, right? So if I said the farmer is going to produce some new leafy produce on his farm, so produce with the emphasis on deuce means he's going to make something. Produce is talking about like vegetables and fruit. This one, since you are close, can you please close the gate? Here, close means near. The second close, close, means the action of shutting something. The lawyer said, I object to you bringing that irrelevant object into the classroom. So the first object is like, I protest. And the second object is like a thing or an item. When she heard her wedding dress tear on the nail, the tears began to fall down her face. So tear would mean rip, tears would mean crying. And again, if you're just reading it and you only saw the one, in certain sentences, you might be not sure which one is which. So it's going to be mindful of when you're reading. It's a little bit easier for some of these, but as we get kind of older and learn more vocabulary, there can be harder words and it can be less obvious. I had to console my little brother when he broke his new game console. So the first console is like I had to comfort my little brother. And the second one is talking about the equipment you play the video game on. So that's an example of homographs. So if you're seeing one and you aren't sure, look it up in the dictionary and it'll give you the different meanings so you've got kind of a better idea. Now, homophones sound exactly the same to our ear, but they look different and they will have different meanings. So here are some examples of homophones. Right, spelled R-I-G-H-T, versus right, spelled R-I-T-E. So for the first one, take a right turn at the gray house. That one is talking about a direction. The priest gave him the last rites. That one is talking about like a tradition or a ceremony. Meet, spelled M-E-E-T, M-E-E-T, versus meet, spelled M-E-A-T. So I can't wait to meet your dad. That's talking about getting to see the person for the first time. Or mom was cutting up moose meat. That's the E-A-T. That's talking about the food that you eat. Rain, spelled R-A-I-N, versus rain, spelled R-E-I-G-N. I don't want the rain to come. So there you're talking about water from the sky. Or the king will reign the country till he dies. In this one, we're talking about he's going to rule the country. Now, the other reason why this is kind of important is your computer spell checker will often not catch these. Why? Because they're still right? It's a real word. It's not spelled incorrectly. You've just used it incorrectly in your sentence. So this is kind of a funny little poem. And it depends. Some spell checkers will find the mistakes in here. Some spell checkers will find all the mistakes. Some will find none of the mistakes, because generally a spell checker is looking at the word in isolation. So I'm going to read this. It's kind of a bit tricky to read at first. Oh my gosh, look at the time. Goodness. I'm not even going to begin to get through all this. All right, I'll read a little bit of it. I have a spelling checker. It came with my PC. It plainly marks for my review mistakes I cannot see. I strike the keys and type a word and wait for it to say whether I am right or wrong. It tells me straight away. I ran this poem through it. You're sure real glad to know it's very polished in its way. My checker told me so. A checker is a blessed thing. It frees you loads of time. It helps me write all styles of writing and aids me when I rhyme. Each phrase comes composed up on my screen. I trust to be a jewel. The checker pores o'er every word to check some spelling rule. Now, so all of this, the words are spelled wrong, but they are homographs. They are the alternate meaning that sounds the same. So you probably wouldn't end up with something that was this hard to read, because this was very hard to read, but you can end up with something that's a little bit odd if you're not careful. Okay, so something to be mindful of. Okay, a print thesaurus is set up a lot like a dictionary. It may have one guide word on one page and the other guide word on the other page, or it may be the dictionary style where it's got one on the one side and one on the other side. It's generally going to give synonyms for each meaning. So here, lady, we've got synonym woman or female. For the second meaning, girlfriend, gal, or woman. For the third, gentlewoman, dame, or noblewoman. Now, this particular synonym didn't necessarily have antonyms. Ooh. Now here, you can see, look, lank, they gave me some synonyms, and then down here, fleshy is an antonym. Oh, it's okay, you gotta kind of look. Some places it'll have like one whole section that's your synonyms, one whole section is that your antonyms. The thing is, like, some words don't have an antonym, okay? So that's one thing to be mindful of. This one looks a little bit different. They're kind of explain things a little better in this one, I think. They're also giving you examples of how it would sound in a sentence. So, use whatever one works for you, but they aren't all exactly the same. See this one. This one I like, oh yeah, because it had synonyms, related words, so like similar but not exactly the same. Then it had near antonyms, things that were almost the opposite, and true antonyms that were exactly the opposite. I think that's kind of cool too, in terms of depending on what kind of writing you're doing or what kind of reading you're doing, that could be very helpful as well. So you may want to pick your thesaurus carefully. They also exist on online sites like Merriam-Webster actually will have like dictionary here, thesaurus here. A lot of the online dictionaries that I found, if you pressed on it, it'll say synonyms or antonyms or something, and it'll just flip you over to their version of the thesaurus. So it's probably a little bit easier when you're doing online to look those things up, but I do think that the print ones are actually a little bit more thorough. Okay, so I have all this really great stuff that I was going to talk about, and yet I don't know how I ended up taking so much time. Okay, well, we're going to just kind of go slow, and if I don't get finished, we will cover this and finish up on Monday, okay? A dictionary can help us find, thesaurus can help us find alternate and more interesting words. Sometimes as we are writing and scrambling to finish a writing assignment, our mind can go blank. We've used the same word over and over, and we know we should change it, but we can't quite think of a new one to put in its place. This is a great time to pull out the thesaurus and give yourself some ideas. let's say you're trying to describe a city scene and you keep using the word buildings, 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 buildings. It doesn't really bring any specific picture to mind. It's a little bit too general. And you can't keep using the word building in every single sentence. What does the thesaurus suggest? So I'm going to give you kind of a picture. Like if I was going to describe this, I don't want to be, well, here's a tall building. Well, there are some shorter buildings. Here are some buildings with windows. Like I want to be more specific. That's a bit vague, right? So if I go to a thesaurus, what I have up here, see how it's dark at the very top, like it's dark orange? Those are the ones that are most close as synonyms. So they gave me structure, house, or edifice. And then they've given me kind of a light orange color, and those are ones that are pretty similar, but not exactly the same. So hut, shed, erection, construction, cabin, castle, cottage, and tower. And then the ones that are lighter colored are somewhat similar, but again, even farther apart. I'm not going to read all of them, but you've got things like shack, mansion, bungalow, skyscraper. Not every thesaurus did this, but I did see versions of this on a few of the ones I checked. And usually there will be like a little key that tells you. So I kind of grabbed ones that I thought might be useful, right? Structure, edifice, tower, skyscraper. Sometimes reading these kind of gave me more ideas. I also checked some other online thesauruses. Some other examples I got were monument, high-rise, monolith, architecture, design, development, creation, complex facility. Now, some of these wouldn't be necessarily able to stick in every single sentence because they might have a slightly different meaning. But again, it just gives me some ideas to start. If a word has multiple meanings, you want to be sure that you use a synonym that matches the right meaning. So for example, for the word charge, there are a whole bunch of different meanings for the word charge. It could mean indictment, mission, instruction, responsibility, attack, cost, stewardship, expense, thrill, and management. And each one of these might have several different synonyms that would work for that meaning, right? It also depends, am I meaning the word charge like a noun, or am I meaning that word like a verb? Because that's a lot, there are a lot of different meanings for that particular word. So you want to be a little bit cautious when you're looking things up to make sure you're looking up the correct meaning. So for here, let's say I'm looking up the word charge, okay? Okay. So first sentence has the police are going to charge him with murder. And over here I have, please put our lunch on the charge account. Those have different meanings. If I was looking for a synonym for charge, for this type of charge, I've got things like accuse, prosecute, indict, incriminate. And for this type of charge, I don't mean like that police are going to arrest somebody. I'm talking about more like a credit card account, like a cost, price, expenditure, expense account, all those kinds of things. So when you are looking up your word, make sure you're thinking about what the original meaning was before you pick your synonym. The other thing to think about is synonyms are alike, but they are not exactly alike. When you look in the thesaurus, many words will have multiple synonyms, but many of them don't mean exactly the same thing. They might have very tiny differences. So just kind of picking any one of them can create misunderstanding if you're not familiar with that. So if you've never heard the word, I would strongly suggest not to use it because it might have a very specific meaning that's not necessarily coming across in the thesaurus or dictionary. So here's an example of what I mean. Let's say you're writing a paragraph for your teacher and you want to explain how hot the temperature is. So you check the thesaurus and you grab a word at random. Fervid, awesome. And then you then proceed to use this in my sentence. He felt so fervid on the summer day by the pool as he talked to Barbara, the postwoman. Now your teacher might know that fervid also means intensely enthusiastic or passionate, not just hot. Now, so I'm not sure, what are you trying to tell me? Are you trying to tell me the character has an undying love for this postwoman? He's attracted to her? Or do you just mean it's a hot day? So you want to be cautious with words you're not familiar of. The other thing about synonyms is what we sometimes refer to as shades of meaning, where they're loosely synonyms to each other, but they might have a slightly different sense of intensity, right? Like if I said, I'm feeling irritated, that's kind of a somewhat of a synonym for anger, but that's very different from if I said, I'm going berserk. They're both loosely synonyms for anger, but they really have a slightly different shade of what they mean for anger. So here are some words for cool or cold, and some of them seem very cool to me, and some of them seem very mild. And if I were to put them in order, right, like I've got things like cool, Arctic, glacial, nippy, chilly, crisp, icy, bracing, and freezing. Now, some of these we might totally agree on. Some of these we might have personal definitions, like crisp makes me think of like just in the when it's beginning to be fall and in the morning it feels like a little tiny bit cooler, right? Whereas super cold, I would say like glacial or Arctic are my ones that are really cold. So after crisp, maybe nippy, like it's a little bit colder. So we think of a little bit of a wind. Bracing, that's pretty similar. I'm not sure where I put that. Cool or chilly? I would say cool might be next to me. And then maybe chilly. Icy and freezing are a little bit different. I think of icy as being a little bit colder and freezing there, but you might organize them differently. But if I went outside and it was negative 40, I probably wouldn't just say it's crisp, right? Because it means something very different. So that's something to be mindful of too when you're using words. Yep. All right. I kind of already gave that example. I am going to kind of quickly go down to where I have the first questions or two. Okay. Hang on a sec. Just because I'm going to split up, because otherwise we're not going to get through this. Here we go. So the very first question says, add 2 synonyms for each of the following words for 3 marks. So 2 synonyms for first, 2 synonyms for last, 2 synonyms for proceed. And here's an example. If they gave me the word big, I might say gigantic or enormous. If they gave me the word small, I might say teeny tiny or minute. Do be mindful that we talked about in terms of it matching the same type of part of speech. Okay. Let me think. What's the next one here? Okay. Sorry, it's wanting to be a bit difficult. Nope. Then it says, give a synonym for each of the following words, and then use each synonym in a sentence. So here is the example they give you. If they gave you the word said, I might use the synonym as claimed. And then in my sentence, I might say, I claimed that I had received the check for $50,000 in the mail. Now, if I used a different synonym, I might get a slightly different sentence. Like, what if I had said, instead of claimed, if I said replied, right? It's kind of, it's one I could use. It's a legitimate synonym for said. Well, then I might say something like, when the teacher asked me a question, I replied that I did not know. It's trying to bury itself down here. Hang on a second. Okay. Now, the words they want you to use is truthful. So think of a synonym and then think of a sentence. And then the other word is fix. Think of a synonym and then put in a sentence. Okay. So 1 mark for each of those. All right. All right. Oh, we already got to the antonyms. Okay. So then it's going to start to talk to you about antonyms. It says, use antonyms of the bold-faced words below to complete these sentences. An example has been completed for you, and this is worth 3 marks. So, for example, we started the season as champions, but finished out of the playoffs. So, sorry, you can't see it, but started is the word they wanted you to use. So, what's the opposite of started? They used finished. So you have to complete the sentence, but use the opposite or antonym word. Okay. So here we've got, we quickly boarded the plane. The story had a sad beginning. We must succeed in finishing our assignment. Okay. So I want to talk about antonyms kind of briefly. Again, a lot of thesauruses will let you look up antonyms as well. They just mean the opposite. Some common ones that you just know right off the top of your head would be things like black, white, hot, cold, small, big, happy, sad, truth, lie, beautiful, ugly. Some antonyms may not be as obvious, or not everyone may be in agreement that they're antonyms, like monarchy, which is a type of government that has a king or queen born by birth, is the opposite of democracy, where people are elected. Endangered would be something at risk of dying. Protected is something that's being taken care of. Frugal would be being very careful with your money. Lavish would be spending it very freely. Unique would be like one of a kind. Common would be there's lots of them. Terrain would be earth. Sky obviously is the sky. So the other thing, remember how we were talking about how the synonyms can have multiple meanings? Same thing for the antonyms, right? If you're grabbing an antonym, you want to make sure that the one you are picking is actually the opposite of the meaning that you're trying to use. So some thesauri may make it very obvious which antonyms belong to which meanings, but others may not make it very clear. And if you've looked up a word and you've never heard or seen it before, I strongly advise you, don't use that one. Pick a word that you are more familiar with, okay? It's just safer, especially for when you're doing an assignment, okay? So here is shades of meaning. Okay, so calm. Calm can mean different things. So if I was looking at the synonyms, I don't like, strongest opposites, because we could be talking about how somebody, okay, here it is, whether they're feeling peaceful or quiet, composed or cool. If I was talking about a calm sea, it would be like there's not lots of waves. So it kind of depends. If I am trying to compare the weather on 2 different days and I want to show them as complete opposites, last Sunday, the wind was calm and the temperature was mild. But today is freezing and the wind is, I want the opposite of calm. Well, adjective doesn't quite work, right? Adjective makes me think of a person. So could be wild or turbulent, right? I have to be careful that it matches the meaning of what I'm trying to aim for, okay? A lot of times the thesaurus will make it pretty clear. The Merriam-Webster is really good for that if you want to take a look at that. All right. Number 4, write sentences using the following pair of antonyms. 2 marks, hot, cold. So I couldn't believe how hot it was outside. My office at work was so cold due to the air conditioning being so high. And they want you to use smile and frown, and then fast and slow. Okay. The next one is actually a little bit tricky. And I think if I try and do it here, I'm gonna, I won't be able to get it kind of explained before I run out of time. So I'm just gonna add a little slide here, just so I can remember this is where we stopped. Because if I don't do that later on, I don't always remember. Hang on a sec, text box. All right, so we are gonna start here on Monday, okay? Now, if you understand all this kind of stuff and find it super easy, you are welcome to go on. Otherwise, Monday I will finish up talking about assignment 17, and then we will try to get assignment 18 done. If you have any questions, you can listen. I'm here for a little bit. You can call me, or I am here all day tomorrow, and you can call me and talk to me then. I love to talk to students, so I'd be happy to hear from you. Take care and have a good weekend.